I'm Jono Buchanan, and in this video we're going to start working with automation in Logic Pro. Let's first of all have a listen to the track that I've worked up here so that we can begin to see the sort of parameters and the instruments that we're going to be working with before we start talking about what automation is and how we might use it. So there's our basic track, but it would be really nice to get some movement into it. When you're working with synthesizers in particular, there are lots of ways in which you can make sounds move. They can either get louder and softer, or they can get brighter and duller, or they can move from left to right. And at the moment, there's none of that movement in this piece. And it would be interesting to see whether or not we can find a couple of parameters, individual bits of the way that the synthesizers are working, so that we can actually get those moving and make the piece a bit more dynamic as a result. Now, to enter Logic's automation mode, I can do one of two things. I can either press the automation button, which is here at the top of the track headers, or I can just press the shortcut A for automation, an easy one to remember. When I do that, you can see that these lanes or the lines have appeared on each individual track, and each one of these lanes corresponds to an individual parameter. By default, when you first open up automation in Logic, volume will be set as the parameter that you're working with, and that's fine if you want to fade things in and out or change the volume of individual notes. But what I want to do with the synthesizer part that I've selected is to find a parameter that relates to the tone of the sound, or the filter cutoff. So to do that, what I can do is to come to where it says volume and to look at the assorted parameters that are available in different categories. And the instrument that I'm using, which is Logic's Retro Synth, is here as a category in its own right. And then what I have is a new drop-down menu relating to the different areas or parameters of the different parts of the synthesizer. And the one that I'm interested in is in the filter section, and here is cutoff. So what I'm going to do is to select this parameter, and then I'm just going to solo this track so we can hear it by itself. Here's the synth in question. So this phrase plays every 2 bars, and what I want to do is to vary the tone of this sound as it plays through. So what I'm going to do first of all is to double click here to establish a new point of automation. You can see that to start with, the automation is all the way down, the filter is all the way down, and what I want to do is to have that climb up to halfway through this bar and then maybe drop away a little bit here. Let's hear how that changes the sound. Okay, so we're getting a little bit more tone change, but if we actually open up Retro Synth, we can see that maybe there's another way that we could push this even harder. The filter section is here within this instrument, and at the moment the cutoff frequency, which is being automated, is also being controlled a lot by the filter envelope, so how much brightness is being brought in by the envelope. So as well as changing the actual cutoff itself, what I'm also going to do is to change the filter envelope. I can add a second automation lane by coming back to the Retro Synth header, by coming into the filter, and this time by selecting cutoff by envelope. Now this time what we have a chance to do is to create another separate lane. You can see a kind of ghost outline of the filter cutoff in the background. So what I can do is to overlay a second lane of data, and we'll follow roughly the same shape, making sure that the envelope opens to the midpoint and then falls away a little bit. Okay, so we're beginning to get some tone change. I'm actually going to push that harder and make this a more extreme line. So let's just make these nodes a little bit more extreme, and we're going to do the same thing with the filter cutoff as well, pushing the middle a little bit harder. Now let's hear how that sounds. Okay, so maybe now we've gone too far the other way. We're missing those first notes, and that's because the envelope has actually gone the other way. It's now producing an inverted shape. So let's just adjust this one node and see if that gets us to where we need to go. I'll push this one in the middle a little bit harder too. That's working nicely, and you can see the automation change happening here. I'm just going to adjust this point a tiny bit more at the beginning, and we've now got 2 parameters working together. Now within Logic, if we actually want to see them side by side, we can toggle this little triangle here on the left-hand side, and here are the 2 lines of automation data happening together. Now it just so happens that this synth part happens 4 times in a row exactly the same way. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use my scissors tool to chop this at this point here, at the beginning of bar 3, and I'm going to throw away the end of this sequence. Now, when I do that, Logic's also going to ask me if I want to erase the automation data. It knows that there is automation data on this track, and it wants to know whether or not I want to get rid of that. Now, as it happens, there isn't any new automation data in the section that I'm throwing away, so it doesn't really matter which of these two options I pick. Having done that, what I can then do is to select this region again, and this time I'm going to copy it. Now again, Logic's going to ask me whether this time I want to copy the automation data as I go, and I do. I want to take this shape that I've created and make sure that I copy it. And you can see that straight away Logic hasn't just grabbed the note information, it's brought the automation data with it as well. I'm going to repeat that just so we get the same thing happening in bars 5 and 7 over here. And again, I'm going to copy the data. And now what I've got is these 2 lanes of automation, which I've added to the track, happening now the whole way through the piece. So that's working really nicely. Of course, however, what that means is that I can now make changes to each individual repeat. If I don't want them to all be the same, that's fine. So what I'm going to actually do is to make this one a slightly subtler shape this second time round. So we have a slightly duller phrase this second time, and then we'll get a repeat of the first one happening here, and then maybe we'll do the same thing over here at the end so that this last iteration is unique as well. So we've just got a little bit of variation coming through the piece from start to finish. And you can see just at the end there, I'm making changes in real time. So actually you can work with automation really intuitively by making changes to automation as you go through on playback. So in this video, what we've done is to add lanes of automation data by finding the parameters that we want to automate, by using the drop-down menu over on the left-hand side for each individual track. And once we've found those parameters, what we can do is to create nodes simply by clicking and dragging those points around to create the shapes that we want to in order to make these parameters come to life within our mixes.